Welcome to this introduction to A Table, A Towel, A Throne by Pastor Shane Vaughn. The Gate and the Glory. There is a gate, narrow, ancient, and weathered by time. It stands at the edge of history and destiny, almost hidden beneath layers of tradition and centuries of religious routine. It is not loud, it does not shine, but for those who are listening, for those whose hearts still ache for something more, the gate remains, open, waiting, calling. Beyond this gate lays a path, not a well-paved road of easy belief or ceremonial comfort and compromise, but a rugged trail carved into the earth by the footsteps of the faithful. This path is not a doctrine. It is not bound by denomination or confined to the rituals of religion. It is older than the so-called New Testament church and deeper than tradition or creed. It begins not in the grandeur of the temples of Judaism or Christianity, nor in the echoes of trained, robed choirs, but it finds its beginnings in modest Israelite homes, dimly lit, hastily prepared, and marked with blood. It begins with trembling hands smearing lamb's blood on a doorpost, with children tucked under blankets, their fathers standing guard in silence, sandals strapped on their feet that have never known freedom. It begins with a command that interrupts the ordinary. Tonight, you leave. The path begins, not in a cathedral or revival tent, but in a house marked with blood. This is where Passover begins, not as a holiday, but as a holy disruption. It is not a mere event to be observed, but a threshold to be crossed, and that crossing marks a transformation that cannot be reversed. Once you've stepped through the gate, you do not return to the world as it was. You cannot. The blood has spoken. The journey has begun. You will have come too far to look back to the rudiments of this world. Your eyes will have seen far more glorious light in which all else dims away. This book is not written for the casual reader. It is not for those content with the pleasantries and platitudes of Easter baskets and paganized Christian religion. It is not for those who approach faith like a hobby, something to pick up and put down. This is for those who are being awakened, those who feel the call of Zion rising like a tide within their bones, those who know there is something more, something ancient, something burning just beyond the veil. The book is written to help call the called. It is a summons, not to a church service, but to an exodus, not to a mere celebration, but to consecration. It is an invitation to Passover, not as a date on a calendar, but as a doorway to a new life. This path is narrow because it demands everything, and yet it is wide with promise, overflowing with the presence of Yahweh for those who will walk it. This is not just a night, it's a just and narrow way, not a tradition, but a transition, not a feast to admire, but a fire to follow. For too long we have stood at the edge of the kingdom, marvelling at its beauty, singing of its glory, preaching of its power, yet hesitating to enter. We have admired the gate, but feared what lies beyond it, because we have seen what lies beyond it, a total life of surrender. We have clung to the comforts of Egypt and Babylon, even as we prayed for the deliverance of Canaan. But no more. As you begin to discover this ancient path that begins with Passover, you will soon learn that it is not some mundane annual observance. It is not a mere memorial of deliverance from Egypt, as Judaism has relegated it to. It is rather the moment of alignment, the turning point where ownership of your own person is fully and unmistakably transferred and identities are rewritten. When the blood of Passover is understood, the application of this blood over your life is no longer just a selfish cry for mercy. It is a declaration of belonging. You are no longer Pharaoh's slave. You no longer march to Babylon's rhythm. You are no longer a citizen of this present age. When the blood is applied, it is not a plea for escape. It is a declaration of belonging. You belong to Yahweh. And from that moment, everything changes. The calendar begins again. The seasons shift. Destiny awakens. When Yahweh declared, "This month shall be the beginning of months unto you," he was not simply instructing his people to mark time differently. He was revealing that life itself begins when the Lamb is chosen. The past becomes irrelevant. The future takes shape, and the only way forward is through the blood. Everything before that day was bondage, everything after, a journey. Passover is the great divide between shadow and substance, between religion and relationship, between being near the truth or being owned by it. It is the crossing where distant admiration ends and imitation begins. It is where we stop admiring the Lamb and start following him. And that following is not metaphorical, it is not abstract, it is embodied, it costs. To follow the Lamb is to leave behind the familiar. It is to walk into the wilderness with nothing but a promise and the presence of the one who called you. It is to live under the cloud by day and the fire by night. It is to learn the taste of hidden manna and the sound of his voice. Only the dead can truly follow him, and only the consecrated can pass through the fire without being consumed. Covenant, after all, is not simply a contract. It is a relationship sealed in blood and walked out in obedience. And Passover is the door into that covenant. When you step through, you are stepping out of one world and into another. You are passing from life to death, from flesh to spirit, from slavery to sonship. So this book is not merely a guide, it is a map, it is a cry, it is a call to every heart that knows there is more than church as usual, more than traditions handed down without power, more than singing about freedom while still living in chains. It is for the children of the promise, those who know they were not born to blend in, but to break out. This is not for the faint of heart. This is for the sons of the covenant. This is Passover, the path to the kingdom. The gate stands open. The blood has been shed. The journey awaits. Now is the time to rise, to gird your loins, to put the leaven away and eat the bread of urgency, because this is more than a feast. It is more than history. It is more than deliverance. It is destiny. This is Passover. This is the path to the kingdom, and you were born for this journey. Chapter 1. The Ballad of Blood. From the vast ocean of well-meaning Christianity comes the concerted refrain, "All I need is the blood." How many saints have spoken those words with sincerity? Yet I wish to teach you in this writing that those words, although well-intentioned, are truly spoken without true understanding. Like a lullaby, the phrase drifts through sanctuaries and settles in pews, soothing the unawakened soul. But in the courts of heaven, such phrases, "All I need is the blood," carries weight, demanding not sentiment, but understanding, submission, and sacrifice. The blood of Christ is not a potion or a password, it is a covenant idiom, sacred, solemn, and binding. It is not the covenant itself, but the signature upon it, the crimson seal at the end of a sacred scroll. And inscribed upon that scroll are 3 divine requirements, each echoing the rhythm of redemption. 1. Baptism, the mikveh that washes away Egypt's dust. 2. Circumcision, the cutting away of the old heart and the stubborn will. 3. Offering, the giving of one's own body as a living lamb. These are not relics of ancient Judaism. They are not ritualistic relics for another age. These are kingdom commandments, bridges of transformation that cross the gulf between deliverance and dominion. They are sacred acts of covenant alignment, each one etched with both heavenly expectation and eternal promise. Yet the modern church has often reduced Passover to metaphor, confined it to history, and rebranded it as a mere foreshadowing. It has been easily dismissed in favour of Good Friday programmes and Easter sunrise services. Both are Christian celebrations that lack the blood-stained footsteps of obedience. But Yeshua did not dismiss Passover. He taught us how to keep it correctly, not by bypassing its requirements, but by walking them completely, step by sacred step, leaving us not just redemption, but a pattern. He did not merely die for us, he died before us and calls us to follow. When Yeshua said, "I am the way," he wasn't offering direction. He declared a process, a divine order, a narrow path, a patterned exodus, and Passover is the gate that leads us into that great and final exodus that the end-time house of Israel is experiencing now. It is the night when lambs meet their fate, when altars drip with sacrifice, and when hearts are pierced, not with nails, but with willingness. It is the place where rulers must first kneel, where the exalted must first die, and where kings are born, not through crowns, but through crosses. Only through death can we find life. Only through offering can we know glory. We must stop treating the blood as a blanket to cover our rebellion. It was never meant to be a veil for disobedience. It is not a license to live unchanged, but the ink that seals a covenant written not in parchment, but in the tears of repentance and the fire of obedience. To say, I claim the blood, all I need is the blood, while walking in willful rebellion, is to forge a signature on a contract one has never read. The blood speaks, not of escape, but of engagement, not of ease, but of exodus. It declares that something has died, namely you, and in your place rises a living sacrifice, clothed in humility, ready to serve. It speaks of a door marked by death, a house prepared to host the presence of the Almighty, and a soul who dares to align fully with the terms of the divine covenant. The popular phrase, I plead the blood, has become for many a magic incantation, but in the spirit it is a covenantal cry echoing with responsibility. To plead the blood is to invoke not just protection, but accountability. You summon not only mercy, but the terms of the agreement. To plead the blood while rejecting the way is to plead it unworthily. For the blood is not a beginning, it is the final seal, and that seal implies that the preceding pages have been fulfilled. Water has washed the vessel, the heart has been cut, and the body been laid down. As in Exodus, the lamb's blood did not spare just because it was seen, it spared because it followed obedience. And every year the call returns like a trumpet, sounding from ancient heights. Prepare the lamb, dress in white, cleanse your hands, wash your feet, find the narrow door, and walk the way. Because Yeshua is not the only lamb, he is the pattern lamb, and every house must bring its own. You are that lamb. Passover is not just a remembrance of his death, it is a reminder of your own. You are called to die, to be broken, to be poured out. The table is not set for spectators, it is set for sacrifices. The blood calls us to follow him, not only in glory, but in grief, in surrender, in silence, in obedience. That costs something. Not all at once, but one act of humility at a time, one silent forgiveness, one quiet surrender. Passover is not a dinner, it is a doorway. And the kingdom awaits those who dare to pass through it. There is a reason the saints dress in white, not for show, but for significance. The robes are not ornamental, they are prophetic. They declare, tonight I present myself as a lamb. I am ready for the knife. I have not come only to dine, I have come to die. While garments are not merely symbols of Yeshua's righteousness, they are the uniform of surrender. They mark those who have understood that to reign with him, we must all suffer with him. They identify the hearts willing to follow him to the altar. And what is that altar? It is obedience. It is reverent suffering. It is silence in the face of slander. Yeshua left us more than victory. He left us an example. He showed us how to die. And until we learn how to die, we will never know how to live. Passover teaches us this. The blood is not enough without the offering. And you are that offering. The vessel must be washed. The heart must be circumcised. The body must be laid down. So let the water pour. Let the hands be cleansed. Let the feet be washed anew. Let the lamb be prepared, not in shadow, but in spirit. For this is not religion. This is the rebirth of the covenant. And when the blood touches the lips of those who understand, something shifts, the veil trembles, a kingdom opens, a narrow path appears, and a voice whispers, this is not just a memory of Yeshua's sacrifice, this is the mirror of your own. Chapter 2. The Passover Yet to Come. It has been echoed as emphatic as cemented truth from countless pulpits, Christ fulfilled Passover. But has he? We must learn to trace the sacred rhythms of Scripture with careful reverence, for fulfillment in the divine economy is never in the beginning of a thing, but in its completion. The death of the Lamb was not the fulfillment of Passover, it was its holy initiation. The door was painted, the bitter of affliction was broken, and its lack of softness and tender texture was tasted. But the true moment of Passover, the moment when death itself is forced to pass over the chosen, has not yet come. Until there is an actual Passover and death no longer lays claim to the body, can we truly declare Christ fulfilled the Passover. What he fulfilled was the sacrificial lamb required for the Passover to eventually happen. The blood was the beginning. The passing over is still to come. This truth unseats the modern gospel of finality and invites us instead into the ancient gospel of rehearsal. Every year that we keep the feast, we are not retracing history, we are rehearsing prophecy. We are practicing a moment that is not behind us, but before us. Colossians 2:17 declares that the holy days are a shadow of things to come, not shadows of the past, not memorials of things once done, shadows of coming glory. So then, what is the Passover? It is not the lamb alone. It is not merely the blood. It is the moment when death comes and is compelled to pass over. That moment has not yet arrived. Has death passed over you, my dear reader? Not yet, but it will. When the graves release the righteous and mortality is swallowed up by immortality, that will be the day when your Passover is fulfilled. Until then, you have legally passed from death to life in the atonement, but what is legal is not yet realized. What is promised is not yet a practiced reality. Yeshua himself whispered this truth on the eve of his betrayal. I will not drink this cup again until I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. Even now he waits. Even now he anticipates the final Passover, when the Lamb shall once again lift the cup, this time in the presence of his resurrected bride. The marriage supper is not a banquet of luxury or spectacle. It is a covenantal table set in eternity, with the table, the towel, and with those who have overcome, the throne. Every year, when we come together into holy convocation as the living and breathing third temple, we do not mourn a death, we prophesy a passing. So we gather year after year. We do not gather to grieve, we gather to rehearse. Clothed in white, we lift trembling hands and raise the covenant cup, not in memory only, but in expectation. We rehearse the moment when death shall pass us by, when our final breath will not be the end, but the beginning. The 5 Passovers. There are 5 great Passovers revealed in Scripture, each one a prophetic layer in Yahweh's redemptive pattern. 1. Abraham and Isaac, the first lamb prepared, the first angel to pass over. 2. The Exodus from Egypt, a nation spared through obedience and blood. 3. The Levitical command, Leviticus 23:5, the institutionalization of the holy appointment. 4. Yeshua's resurrection, where death passed over him, but not yet over us. 5. The firstborn resurrection, when death passes over the 144,000 lambs once and for all. Each one a whisper, each one a shadow, each one inching closer to glory. And we, beloved, are living in the sacred in-between, between the 4th and the 5th, between the Lamb's death and our own deliverance, between offering and overcoming. We are rehearsing redemption until resurrection becomes reality. Revelation 26 says, Shout this mystery aloud. Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection. On such the second death hath no power. This is your Passover, not in the past, but in the promise, not in tradition, but in transformation, not in Egypt, but in eternity. You are not merely remembering Christ's death, you are preparing for your own deliverance from death. The covenant shift, from marriage to adoption. To understand the Passover yet to come is also to understand the true covenant structure we are entering. Many have been taught that Yahweh had to die in order to remarry Israel, but Scripture speaks clearly Yahweh is not a man. Numbers 23:19 says, God is not a man that he should lie. The incarnation must not be seen as Yahweh taking on flesh, but as Yahweh appointing a son, a proxy, a mediator, an anointed agent. 1 Timothy 2:5 clarifies this mystery. For there is one God and one mediator between God and men, one man, Christ Yeshua. You are not entering into marriage with Yahweh the Father. You are being joined to Yeshua the Son. The old woman, natural Israel, died in the mikveh, the waters of baptism, and a new woman, the remnant bride, arose, ready to enter a new covenant with a new groom. Yeshua is the groom, Yahweh is the Father, and the covenant leads us to adoption. For marriage in the divine order leads to family, and just as a bride becomes a mother, so too your covenant with Yeshua leads to your adoption by Yahweh. Ephesians 1:5 reveals the mystery. He predestined us for adoption to sonship through Yeshua Messiah. This is the divine hierarchy. The newly created remnant bride is to be married to the Son, and from that marriage covenant be transformed into full adoption by the Father. It is the marriage covenant that produces the sonship covenant. All marriages are designed to bring forth sons, and this is where the church has lost its clarity. It has confused the roles, calling the father the groom and the son the father, but once you find your place at the table, the mystery unfolds. At Passover, you covenant with the Son. At Pentecost, you receive the spirit of adoption. At Tabernacles, you shall dwell forever in the house of Yahweh. You are not just saved, you are being shaped for a family. And that is why Passover matters. It is not a ritual, it is a rehearsal for royalty. Every year you drink the blood, not only of the Lamb, but of your own covenant. You eat the bread, not of religion, but of union. You wash, not only your feet, but your identity. Year after year, the feast calls you again, not to sentiment, but to readiness. Not for a church service, but for a kingdom. For Passover is not fulfilled yet, but soon, so very soon, death shall pass you by. Chapter 3, the next step. The door has been marked, the cup has been lifted, the blood has spoken. And yet this is not the end. It is not even the middle. It is only the beginning. For Passover is not a destination, it is a threshold. It is not the final act of redemption, but the first act of transformation. It invites us into the story of the Lamb. But only those who walk the path discover that the Lamb is not just Saviour, he is the pattern. And patterns are not observed, they are followed. There is a next step, a quiet, sacred step, one that draws us beyond belief and into a place where faith must become flesh. The journey that began with blood now leads us into the furnace of formation, a place where souls are tested, not by trial alone, but by tenderness, where sandals are removed, where pride is loosened, where the dust of Babylon is washed away by the slow, deliberate pouring of water. If I wash thee not, thou hast no part with me. So said Yeshua to Peter, words filled not with threat, but invitation. To be washed by him is not a ritual of cleanliness, it is a renewing of covenant, a tender act of realignment. Not because our hearts have turned completely, but because our feet have wandered slightly. He knows the long journey. He knows the world is dry, and the roads are dusty. He knows that even the faithful collect residue from the streets of Egypt. This is the mystery of the mikveh, the unseen fire behind the water, the hidden glory behind the basin. It is not a symbol of religiosity, it is the womb of rebirth. We were told that baptism was an end, that foot washing was a tradition of humility, that communion was a pause in our week to remember grace. But what if we have misunderstood the sequence? What if water is not a closing ceremony, but the very opening of the covenant? What if each act, the washing, the breaking, the pouring, is not backward-looking, but forward-leading? At Passover we return to these acts, not because the first time was insufficient, but because the journey continues. Each year we come to the water not as strangers, but as travellers, bruised by the burdens of Babylon, stained by the weariness of war. We carry disappointment, quiet anger, fragments of ego. The dust clings to us in ways we cannot see. So the Master kneels once more, through his proxy saints, those whose hands he will use to wash your feet and hands, not with condemnation, but compassion. He bends down, not because we are unworthy, but because covenant requires cleansing. The process is deliberate, the motions matter. The washing is slow, not because he is hesitant, but because he is holy. In the silence of the washing, something within us is humbled. We remember again in this way that this way is not earned, it is entered. That Yahweh's kingdom is not accessed by power, but by posture. The basin becomes a mirror, the water a witness. That is why we dress in white, not for appearance, but for alignment, not to show purity, but to show availability. A willing lamb is not clothed in armor, but in surrender. The white robe does not declare our worth, it declares our intention to walk, to yield, to become. Present yourselves as living sacrifices. Paul wrote those words not for philosophers, but for Passover people, for those who knew that altars are not made for admiration, but for offering. We are not spectators of the gospel. We are participants in its mystery. We are not watching Yeshua die. We are walking with him step by sacred step, through Gethsemane, through judgment, through obedience. The next step, then, is not performance. It is not emotionalism or outward fervour. It is a deep, inward surrender, a quiet saying of yes in places no one sees. It is forgiveness, offered before it is asked. It is obedience, given before it is explained. It is the washing of another's feet, not for ceremony, but because they are tired and you are willing. It is a bread broken, not just remembered. It is a cup lifted, not for tradition, but for transformation. It is a fact, discerning the body. We are not rehearsing religion, we are rehearsing resurrection. And every slow, intentional and deliberate act, each foot washed, each cup poured, each sung song, each cup shared, each hand washed, is preparing us for something greater, not merely the return of Yeshua, but the rise of the bride. The kingdom is not inherited by those who observe from afar. It is given to those who engage with reverent endurance, those who absorb the offence, those who bow before explaining, those who love when unloved, those who see suffering not as interruption, but as initiation. So what is the next step? It is to become the Lamb. Not just to sing of the Lamb or preach the Lamb, but to embody him. It is to rehearse the marriage supper until it becomes more vivid than your own shadow. It is to endure loss without complaint, to endure silence with grace, to walk slowly through the feast, not as a guest, but as a bride preparing her garments. It is to hear again the voice of the beloved calling from behind the veil. Draw me, and we will run after thee. You are not just learning the path, you are becoming the path. Each footstep is not just movement, it is ministry. Each surrender, not just submission, it is transformation. And with each act of humility, your life begins to echo his. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Messiah. This renewed covenant mind does not grasp at glory. It does not seek position, it pours water. It embraces the towel long before it embraces the throne. It allows itself to be misunderstood, unseen, and yet unmoved. Passover then is more than a table. It is more than a night. It is more than a memory. It is a summons, a quiet call to take the next step, not louder, nor flashier, but deeper, wider, holier. He that endureth to the end shall be saved. Not he that understood, not he that wept, not he that watched, but he that endured. And so, dear soul, as the blood speaks, and the bread breaks, and the water flows, and the basin waits, take the next step, not for religion, not for recognition, but for the kingdom that awaits on the other side of surrender. The door has been marked, the cup has been lifted, the blood has spoken. Now walk therein. Chapter 4. What's the point? The Lamb is chosen, the garments are white, the table is set, the people have gathered. The prayers rise like incense, the songs linger in the air, the candles flicker, casting soft shadows that dance with reverence. And yet, from beyond the veil of time and space, a question descends like thunder, clothed in whisper. What is the point of it all? What is the meaning of all this sacred preparation if the Lamb never changes you? What purpose do the white robes serve if the heart beneath them remains untouched, still proud, still unyielding? What weight does the feast carry if the soul leaves the table unbroken, unbent, unshaken? Yahweh is not silent. His word speaks still through the ancient prophets, unwavering and unambiguous. I am full of your sacrifices. I take no delight in the multitude of your offerings. Bring no more vain oblations. Isaiah 1:11-13. This rebuke does not fall upon the godless, but upon the devout, those who observe the times, bring the lamb, recite the prayers, and yet walk away unchanged. The rebuke of Passover is not reserved for the irreverent, but for those who keep it outwardly, without allowing its inward fire to consume them. We count the days until the feast, but do we count the cost of becoming the offering? We tremble at missing the calendar's mark, but do we tremble at missing the deeper meaning? If the cup touches your lips and nothing within softens, if the bread breaks in your mouth, yet your pride remains whole, then what has truly been accomplished? Have we honoured Yahweh, or merely reenacted a memory? Passover is not something we keep, it is something that must keep us. There is a danger, quiet, persistent, the danger of ritual without transformation, of lifted hands paired with locked hearts, of white garments draped over resentment, of gathering in obedience, yet departing untouched. Passover was never intended to be a performance. It is not a tradition to be perfected, but a flame to be felt. It is a sacred fire meant to consume what is false, to cut between flesh and spirit, habit and holiness, pretense and purity. You are not called to perform Passover, you are called to become it. The lamb does not belong solely upon the table, it belongs upon the altar. And that altar must be your will, your mind, your emotions, your reasoning, your control. Unless your will is pierced, unless the self yields, the feast is reduced to symbol, and the substance remains untouched. The white garments we wear were never stitched for elegance. They were fashioned for surrender. They are priestly, prophetic, voluntary. They are not for appearance, but for offering. And the water, that ceremonial washing, is not for the outer man alone. It must reach into deeper places, into motive, memory, and intention. It must cleanse not only the hand, but the reason for the reaching. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. James 4:8. When we come together at Yahweh's appointed time, we are not gathering to remember Pharaoh. We are not fixed on Egypt. Not even the Red Sea holds our gaze. Even the cross, though sacred, is not the final mountain. Mount Zion is. The city of the living God, the gathering of the firstborn, the place where lambs are crowned, and tears are turned to songs. Passover does not call us to look backward at it. It constantly and consistently, year after year, calls us forward, into covenant, into calling, into the bridal fire. Passover is the engagement of the bride. It is the invitation to become one with the Lamb. It is the transformation of man into offering. And if that transformation does not take place, if something within us does not die and give way to something holier, then we have not kept the feast, we have simply eaten a meal. So Yahweh asks again, what is the point? What is the point of a wedding ring if the vow has never reached the heart? What is the point of a table if it leaves you full of self and empty of surrender? He does not despise this sacrifice. He designed it. But he turns away from the sacrifice without surrender, from lifted hands that never open, from offerings given without obedience, from garments worn without repentance, and from lips that sing while hearts remained closed. The goal of Passover is not attendance, but alignment. If the meal does not soften the tongue, quiet the mind, tender the heart, then its work remains incomplete. If you leave the table still rehearsing bitterness, still holding judgment, still guarding old wounds, then do not put on white, let the ashes speak instead. For what is the beauty of Passover if its purity has not reached you? There are those who reject the feast altogether, and there are those who cling to it as ritual. Neither path finds pleasure in Yahweh's eyes. He is not seeking mere observance. He is not impressed by ceremony. He seeks the remnant, those whose hearts break before their bread does, those who come to wash, not for appearance, but for inward tenderness, those who enter not to perform, but to be pierced. The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, thou wilt not despise. Psalm 51:17. He is not listening for those who ask, am I doing this correctly? He is waiting for those who ask, Father, what do you desire from me today? And his answer never changes. Do justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your Elohim. Let that be the rhythm in every step toward the basin. Let that be the spirit behind every poured cup. Let that be the breath behind every bite of unleavened bread. For if justice, mercy, and humility do not sit at the table with us, then the table is not yet prepared. Let the shadows teach you. Let the symbols serve you. But do not remain in them. Do not settle for a figure when you are called to become the fullness. Go beyond the door. Go past the basin. Go beyond the veil. Enter the most holy place, and let the Lamb not only cover you, but change you. Not only clothed in white, but made white. Not merely drinking the cup, but letting it wash the innermost chambers of your soul, until what was once a ritual becomes a reality, until what was once a rehearsal becomes embodiment, until the question no longer echoes from the heavens, what's the point? Because your life has become the quiet, radiant answer. Chapter 5, The Cup of the Covenant. On the night he was betrayed, Yeshua held a cup, not one of finality, but of a future not yet fulfilled. He looked at his disciples, those fragile men still trying to understand the weight of the moment, and spoke a sentence that would hang suspended in the heavens for generations to come. I will not drink of this cup again until I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. In that moment, everything shifted. The table was no longer just a place of remembrance. It became an altar. The bread became a vow, the cup a covenant. This was not a farewell. It was not the closing of a chapter. It was in every sense a proposal. Yeshua was not offering them an ending. He was inviting them into a beginning. The Last Supper, as it's often called, was not a eulogy for a dying teacher. It was the engagement ceremony of a coming king, and the Passover table was his proposal table. The cup in Yeshua's hand was not just wine, it was a future. When he passed it to his disciples, he was asking for their loyalty, their love, and their trust. And when the bride lifts that same cup to her lips year after year, she is not merely participating in a tradition, she is responding to the proposal. Her sip is a vow. I accept. I will wait. I will be faithful. This is why the people of Yahweh dress in white on that night. It is not to mourn a death, but to celebrate a promise. The cup is not lifted in sorrow, but in confidence. not in remembrance of defeat, but in anticipation of a wedding. Yeshua said, "Do this in remembrance of me." And while the world has remembered the pain, the cross, the nails, the loss, too many have forgotten the promise. So many of Christendom have remembered the corpse, but not the crown. They have faithfully remembered the crucifixion, but not the coming kingdom. In truth, not only did Yeshua drink the cup, he passed it, he reserved it, he left it full, waiting for a moment that has not yet arrived, the moment when the groom and the bride sit together at the table of fulfillment. That is the marriage supper of the Lamb, and each year at Passover we rehearse it, not as a performance and not with modern substitutes, but with sacred garments, sanctified elements, and vows renewed in holy silence. Each time we take the cup, we say something that words may never fully capture. In our spirit we whisper, "I still believe, I have not forgotten, I'm still wearing the veil," and all of heaven takes notice. To drink this cup is to respond to the King's invitation. It is to RSVP for the wedding, not with ink and signature, but with trust and tears. It's not a communion, it is a covenant. Much of the modern church has replaced the moment with routine. Communion, as it is commonly practiced, has its roots in tradition, not Torah. But Passover is not a church ordinance, it is a kingdom engagement, and it comes not once a week or at the convenience of men, but on one appointed night, the 14th day of the first month. This is the night the bride is summoned to the table. And what a table it is! It stretches through time, it bears the fingerprints of Abraham, the footsteps of Moses, the prayers of prophets, and the blood of the Lamb. When you approach it, you are not coming to a religious ritual. You are walking an aisle. You are stepping into a love story that began before the foundation of the world and will not end until the cup is finally shared between heaven and earth. When you lift the cup, you are declaring, "I am still yours. I am still waiting." You are reminding the world and reminding yourself that there is no other groom, no other promise, no other kingdom worthy of your allegiance. The world may not understand why you do it, why you refuse to modernize the moment. Why do you pour the water? Why do you wash the feet? Why do you reject the Seder plate and refuse to exchange the lamb for lesser symbols? Deep within you know why, because he asked you to, because he said he would return, because he's waiting too. And one day, on the day appointed in the courts of heaven, the cup will no longer represent remembrance. It will be a vessel of fulfillment. The groom will rise, the veil will be lifted, the heavens will open, and the final Passover will unfold. The table will stretch across eternity, and Yeshua, no longer waiting, will pour the cup and say, "Drink, my beloved, for the waiting is over." Until then, we rehearse. We come to the table in white, we wash our hands, our feet, our intentions. We take the bread with reverence. We lift the cup with joy, and we whisper vows into the silence, knowing that our faithfulness is not forgotten. This is the cup of the covenant, and we will not forget. Chapter 6. The Lambs Without Guile. He committed no sin, no guile was found in his mouth. These words were spoken of Yeshua, the spotless Lamb, but they are not reserved for him alone. Scripture dares to describe another company, those who follow the Lamb wherever he goes, a people without deceit, standing blameless before the throne of Yahweh, a remnant not only redeemed by the blood, but reshaped by it. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. Revelation 14:5. These are not just mythical saints carved from imagination. They are not unreachable icons sealed in stained glass. They are real, formed in the furnace of obedience, refined in the waters of mikveh, laid bare on the altar of surrender. They did not arrive at Zion by accident. They are the fruit of discipline, the echo of feasts kept in sincerity. They are the harvest of covenant faithfulness. They do not merely worship the Lamb, they are becoming lambs, for every house must bring a lamb. Not only the Lamb, but a lamb. That instruction did not pass away in Egypt's shadows. It echoes through every generation. It is not a ritual, it is a revelation. In every era, Yahweh calls for lambs, not spectators, not scholars, not even servants, but those willing to become what they once beheld. That's you. The church has long declared, Yeshua did it all. And yes, his atonement is finished, lacking nothing, but heaven still whispers, follow the Lamb. It does not call us to admiration alone. It invites imitation. To believe is the beginning. To follow is the calling. To walk as he walked, to live as he lived, and in time to lay that life down as he did. The Lamb didn't merely save us from death. He taught us how to die daily, how to surrender without condition, how to embrace the altar, not avoid it. The path is narrow, not because it is concealed, but because it leads through surrender, through the slow death of the will, through the burial of ego and the fading of self. It winds through the waters of identity, through the cutting of covenant, through the fire that tests and transforms. It is not a path paved with performance, but with perseverance. This is the mark of the 144,000. They are not celebrated merely for their belief. They are honored because they became. They carry his name, not only on their lips, but in their lives, not simply on their foreheads, but in their footsteps. Their power is not flawlessness, it is faithfulness. Not in external perfection, but in internal purity. They are not without error, but they are not without guile. Their secret is not sinlessness, it is surrender. It is the continual return to the water, the unrelenting journey back to the altar every Passover night. They stumble, but they stumble toward holiness. They fall, but always in the direction of the cross. Their strength is not their own, it is drawn from the word that washes, from the spirit that leads, from the covenant that calls them onward. Mikveh for them is not a single moment, it is a way of being. Every word of Yahweh becomes water, every commandment a current, every feast an immersion. And Passover is the deepest mikveh of all, not simply because of what is washed, but because of what is offered. It is not merely a cleansing, it is a burial. It is not just about being clean, it is about being crucified. A living sacrifice, a paradox, a mystery. To breathe, yet no longer for self, to live, yet already surrendered, to speak, to choose, to move, not as one who survives, but as one who has already died. This is what it means to become a lamb, to follow Yeshua, not from a distance, but into his death, to join him, not only at the table, but upon the altar. Each year, on the 14th day of the first month, when the white-robed faithful assemble again, heaven leans in. For these are not casual participants, not mere chronicles of Exodus, not readers of ritual. They are the becomers, the offerings, the lambs. They come not simply to eat the bread, but to become it, not only to drink the cup, but to say, let my will be poured out with it. This is why the enemy fears Passover, because it not only the remembrance of one lamb's death, it is a global echo of Calvary. Not one lamb dying, but multitudes, rising as one body, offered in unity, 1,000 offerings, not from platforms, but from daily surrender. Do not be misled. You are not merely saved from death or from dying, but rather you are saved through it. Yeshua did not die so you could avoid the altar. He died to lead you to it, to show you how to place there what cannot enter the kingdom. Pride, resistance, fear, self, and in its place, resurrection, not only in theory but in reality, not only in belief but in power. The blood was never shed to bypass obedience. It was shed to make covenant binding, to empower you to follow, to walk the narrow path, to be clothed in white, not only by grace, but by consecration. So bring your lamb, bring yourself, come to Passover. Let the water flow freely. Let the word divide bone from marrow. Let the Spirit guide every step. Lay down your body and lift up your grace. This is not tradition, this is transformation. This is not merely ceremony, it is consecration, the slow daily offering of those being shaped into his image. And if you walk this way, if you truly follow the Lamb, you will stand on Mount Zion, without guile, without fear, without shame. Not because you never fail, but because you never stopped returning to the altar. You will stand as the Lamb stands, because you have become one of the lambs without guile. Chapter 7. Every Man a Lamb. For centuries in the Christian Church, from where we all came, we have rightly honoured the Lamb. For generations his name has been lifted in song, his sacrifice remembered with reverence, and his blood proclaimed as the beginning and end of all of our salvation. The story of redemption begins with Yeshua and his offering. It flows from the cross and finds its centre in his obedience. Yet for those who continue to walk the covenant path, the revelation does not remain static. It begins to deepen, unfolding like a scroll. The heart slowly shifts from mere admiration to holy imitation. A new question rises within the mind, not just, what did he do for me, but what does he now require of me? And the answer, though quiet, comes with piercing clarity. Every man must bring a lamb. Passover was never meant to be a memorial concert for a lamb long gone. It was never designed as a holy stage where spectators could admire the sacrifice of another. From its very inception, Passover has always been a covenantal call, one that reaches into every household and touches every soul. It is not about watching Yeshua die, it is about joining him. It is not simply an invitation to observe the altar, it is a summons to ascend it. In the book of Exodus, Yahweh gave the instruction clearly and directly. Speak to the whole assembly of Israel and tell them, on the 10th day of this month, each man must bring a lamb for his household. Exodus 12:3. This was not a generalized or symbolic instruction, it was painfully specific. Each man, every house, a lamb, no one exempt, no household overlooked, no offering outsourced to another. The responsibility of bringing the lamb was not merely about logistics, it was about covenant representation. It declared that your household was entering into something sacred, something that could not be delegated, something that had to be lived. This principle, what we might call the plural principle of Passover, reveals that Yeshua is not the conclusion of sacrifice, but the blueprint. He is the lamb, yes, but not the only one. He is the firstborn among many brethren, the first lamb among many lambs. He is the template, not the terminus. His sacrifice is not meant to eliminate ours, but to give it shape. His death is not the end of offering, but the call to embody it. John, in his apocalyptic vision, saw a lamb standing on Mount Zion, but the vision did not stop with Yeshua alone. Surrounding him were 144,000, redeemed, marked, and consecrated, and they were not simply followers or worshippers, they were lambs. They had not only believed the message of salvation, they had become its manifestation. Scripture describes them as those who follow the Lamb wherever he goes, from Revelation 14:4. These are not fairy tale saints nor mystical beings, they are men and women who walked the narrow path, through water, through obedience, through suffering, and through surrender, not just to admire Yeshua, but to be transformed into his likeness. Yeshua is the Lamb of the nation, but you are the Lamb of your house. As he was offered for the redemption of Israel, you are called to offer yourself for your family, for your generation, and for the body of Messiah. This is not theoretical language, It is a covenantal instruction. Passover does not ask you to sit and observe. It calls you to stand and present yourself, not merely as a guest at the table, but as a living offering placed upon it, not merely to recite the exodus of old, but to live a personal exodus, a departure from self-rule into complete surrender, not merely to remember a lamb, but to become one. Paul echoes this in his urgent plea to the Roman believers. I beseech ye, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. Romans 12:1. That at its core is the essence of Passover. It is not a staged performance dressed in traditional trappings. It is not a set of customs designed to keep memory alive. It is a prophetic reenactment that transforms into reality. It is a path of fire, a gate of surrender, a journey not toward religious identity, but toward covenant embodiment. And out of that offering, out of that surrender, comes life. Not merely extended life, but eternal life. A life that cannot be taken because it has already been given. A life that death can no longer hold because it has already died once, willingly, in covenant love. This is the paradox of the gospel, that life flows only through death, and power is birthed only through surrender. Each year, as we return to the Passover table, we bring more than bread and wine. We bring ourselves. We come into it with our intentions and our failures, our joys and our wounds. We come not to polish old traditions, but to be poured out afresh. The water we pour is not a performance, it is purification. The hands we wash are not merely outer gestures, they speak of inward cleansing. The feet we bathe are not washed for ceremony, but for consecration. For in these holy acts, something in us is dying again. These are not customs, they are consecrations. They are not sentimental reenactments, they are sacred moments of renewal. Every step toward that table is a step toward surrender. Every piece of unleavened bread consumed is a declaration. I too will live without corruption. Every sip of cup is a vow. I too will pour myself out. And when you rise from that table, when your feet touch the floor and your garments are white, you are not simply dressed for a feast. You are clothed for sacrifice. You step into the holy calling. I am the Lamb for my house. You are not waiting for the Lamb to return so you can observe his work. You are walking with him now, carrying his burden, embracing his sufferings, and sharing in his glory. This is why the garments matter, why the foot washing matters, why the water must touch more than your hands. It must reach your motives, your thoughts, your affections, why the blood must do more than stain the doorpost. It must inscribe itself upon your spirit mind. You are not merely remembering a covenant, you are renewing it, sealing it with your own offering. You are the Lamb without blemish, not because you have never stumbled, but because you have given Yahweh your whole self without reserve. You are the Lamb without guile, not because your strength is unshakable, but because your surrender is sincere. You are the Lamb chosen for this house, this year, this hour, not by chance, but by calling. And this is what makes Passover terrifying to the enemy. It is not the memory of one lamb's death that haunts the kingdom of darkness. It is the rising of many lambs, a multitude of lives being laid down, a generation dying to pride, dying to will, dying to self, so that Messiah might rise, not alone, but multiplied in every surrendered vessel. This is not simply a memorial. It is not merely communion. It is a covenant continuation. It is not sentiment. It is sacrifice, not memory, but manifestation. So come, bring your body, bring your burdens, bring your loyalty, your weakness, your yes. Bring your vow, bring your robe, bring your lamb. For on this sacred night, in the hush of reverence and the fire of covenant, every man is a lamb. Conclusion: the path reclaimed. The journey, though long, is far from finished. In truth, it has only just begun. Passover was never intended to be a relic buried beneath centuries of tradition, nor a religious reenactment trapped in an ancient memory. It was not given to stir nostalgia or to provide a calendar event for sacred sentimentality. It was, and still is, a threshold, a living door, opened year after year, inviting every willing soul to step out of Egypt again. Not just Egypt of bondage, but of comfort, conformity, and compromise. Passover stands as the first step in a journey that winds through valleys of obedience and ascends mountains of consecration. It is the divine origin point of everything eternal: righteousness, holiness, devotion, and dominion. To keep Passover is not merely to remember where we've been, it is to declare where we are going. This path, though ancient, must be made new in every generation. It was first walked in sandals through desert wilderness, later pressed into stone at Calvary, and still leads upwards towards the mountain of promise, Mount Zion. What began beneath blood-stained lintels now beckons towards glory, not yet fully revealed. But the presence of blood at the beginning is no guarantee of arrival at the end. That assurance only belongs to those who continue to walk. Only those who follow the Lamb, step by step, feast by feast, surrender by surrender, will stand with him when the kingdom comes in fullness, clothed not only in memory, but in manifestation. In these pages we have traced the contours of that path together. Each chapter opened another gate into the mystery of covenant, revealing truths long buried beneath ritual and silence, truths whispered through shadows, now brought again into light. We have seen with new eyes the story that was always waiting in the symbols, always singing from the silence of the scriptures. We have come to understand that the blood upon the doorpost was never meant to be the conclusion of our story, but only the covenant's opening line. The feast was not fulfilled once and for all in the upper room. It still stretches toward a moment yet to come, to the marriage supper of the Lamb, where the faithful shall dine with the bridegroom in unveiled bride glory. We have learned that covenant is not symbolic only, it is costly. It demands the surrender of your will, the obedience of our steps, the reverence of our hearts. Covenant requires that we not merely attend the table, but offer ourselves upon it. We face the sobering truth that participation without transformation is not only hollow, it is offensive to the altar itself. That hands lifted without hearts bowed are not worship, but performance. That a robe without repentance is a garment too thin to cover us. Yet we also rediscovered the hope that the cup can still cleanse, that the table still calls, that transformation is still possible for every heart willing to yield. We lifted the cup again, not simply in remembrance of a death, but in renewal of a vow. We stood with the company of the guileless, not those who never stumbled, but those who never stopped returning to the altar. We heard the quiet cry of Exodus rise once more. Each man must bring a lamb, and we begin to realize, through trembling and truth, that we are the Lamb. We are not here to admire the Lamb from afar. We are called to follow him, to imitate him, to join him in the mystery of being broken for the sake of others. Passover, then, is not just about what Yeshua once did. It is about what he is still doing in us, through every act of humility, through every refusal to bow to pride, through every robe of white worn in quiet sincerity, through every foot bathed in holy compassion, through every whispered yes in the dark, and every loud no to the flesh, in every cup lifted with trembling hands, and every loaf broken with open hearts. He is working still. We do not return to this table each year for formality. We return to be changed. We wash one another's feet, not to check a ceremonial box, not to break the crust of callousness that forms in the corners of our hearts. We dress in white, not for religious display, but as a sign of readiness, for service, for suffering, for sanctification. We eat and drink not to rehearse the past, but to embrace the future. We come not to perform, but to be pierced. And now as you reach this final page, may the purpose of it settle deep within your spirit. Passover is not merely a feast, it is a path, a narrow road paved with the stones of covenant, soaked in the blood of surrender, lit by the flame of holiness. It begins with the Lamb, but it ends with glory. It begins in Egypt, but it ends in Zion. It begins with deliverance, but it ends with dominion. This path winds through valleys of loss and climbs over hills of decision. It passes through waters, through wilderness, through whispers in the night when no one sees but heaven. It calls us to altars we do not always understand, and to sacrifices we do not always want to make, but always it calls us home. You have walked with me through this gate of understanding. You have felt the weight of the altar and heard the cry of the Lamb. You now know what it means to walk the path that leads not just to freedom, but to kingship, not merely to forgiveness, but to union. So go, let Passover be your compass. Let it point you again and again toward the altar, the basin, the cross, and the crown. Let your life be your offering. Let your footsteps mirror his. Let your obedience become your song. And when the trumpet sounds, when the sky is rent with glory and the King returns to keep the feast at last, may you be found not merely watching, but waiting, not merely hoping, but ready. May you be found clothed, consecrated, faithful, and without guile. Because this is not the end, it never was. This is the path reclaimed. This is the mystery of the table, the towel, and the throne. Discerning the body, a call to holiness and truth. Introduction.